Welcome, everyone, to Inquirer Live. I'm Jonathan Tannenwald, the Inquirer's soccer beat reporter. What a moment it is for sports in Philadelphia right now with the Phillies in the playoffs, the Eagles 5-0 and hosting the Cowboys on Sunday night this weekend. The Flyers season is about to start. The Sixers season is about to start. And obviously, I might be a little biased, but still, it is an amazing time for soccer in Philadelphia right now. The Union are heading into the playoffs as the best team in the Eastern Conference. NBC's English Premier League Fan Fest will be here at Dilworth Park this weekend. In just over a month, the Men's World Cup will finally be here, and there could be as many as four players from the Philadelphia region on the U.S. team, which has never happened before. And the next Men's World Cup after that, as I'm sure some of you know, will be here in the United States and Canada and Mexico, and here specifically in Philadelphia. It will be the first time the world's biggest sporting event comes to this city. It will be the first soccer World Cup that Philadelphia has hosted since 2003, the Women's World Cup back then. There is so much to talk about the world's game in this great city right now, and it is just wonderful to have a dear friend of mine here for the occasion. If you watch soccer on TV at all, or if you are engaged with the sport on social media, I'm sure you've seen Roger Bennett before. He's a co-host of the Men in Blazers podcast and TV show for NBC Sports, a contributor to MSNBC's Morning Joe program. He's written a number of books. He's got a bunch of different podcasts that are out there, including some we'll talk about today. I've known Roger for almost a decade, since he was making documentary films on the U.S. men's national team before the 2014 World Cup. And now, a man who is so accustomed to giving flowery introductions to his guests gets the tables turned on him here on Inquirer Live. It is my pleasure to welcome my dear friend, Roger Bennett. Raj, how are you?
Oh, it's
and the jacket. I knew you were going to wear the jacket.
There you go. Shout out to Jim's Cheesesteaks, mate. All of you who rely on that incredible outpost of culinary wonder for your all the people who work there, mostly more than anything. Never mind all the people like me that live for that place. May you all speedily please return. I've got to tell you, this picture you put of me on Twitter, I've had so many people who thought that you were announcing my death with that in memoriam style photograph.
No, Yiskra was last week, Raj, as you want to know. It's not this week.
I saw it and I got sad for a moment. I was like, oh, him. He was all right. It's good to be with you.
Oh, what a pleasure. Let's jump into this stuff, and let us start with the Premier League Fan Fest being in town this weekend. I was walking over by City Hall this morning to take a look at the construction. There's a big banner. The English have put a banner atop Philadelphia City Hall, Roger. It's an amazing sight. Not just because the Fan Fest is here this weekend, though, but because I'm not sure I've ever seen a time when there have been more American players of real consequence in English soccer. There have been plenty of Americans in English soccer over the years. Obviously, there's a ton of American money in the Premier League in particular, with all the American owners of clubs. But in terms of player talent, Brendan Aronson, who of course is from Medford, New Jersey, Christian Pulisic from Hershey, PA, Tyler Adams, Chris Richard, who if only he wasn't injured, at Crystal Palace, Tim Ream, Jedi Robinson, Matt Turner, and in the second division, Josh Sargent, Zach Steffen, who's from Downingtown, Austin Trusty from Media, who's doing great at Birmingham City. The list goes on and on. I've never seen it like this before, Raj, and I've been watching and covering the sport for 20 years. To me, it's really remarkable. What's it been like for you?
I'm still mesmerised by the notion of a British flag flying over Philadelphia. I watched the NFL game at Tottenham Hotspur in London, the Packers and the Giants last weekend. And before the game, they pulled out one of those ginormous American flags that you ritually have to unfurl at a football game or else it can't kick off. And someone tweeted on our feed that it was as if an alternate history, America had invaded Britain, and it would be like what Britain looked like under alternate American rule, which, by the way, I would have welcomed. But the notion that Philadelphia has an English flag, British flag flying over it, it's like an alternate history that they never bloody left. So that one I find most terrifying. But this wave of young American men's talent flourishing, not just in the Premier League, but in leagues across Europe, Germany, in Belgium, up in Scotland, Cameron Carter-Vickers captaining Celtic in Champions League play. These are the kind of times we dreamt about. We used to get excited as people that cover the sport when one of our men would play against Juventus or Chelsea or Milan, and now we have players in the squads for them on the regs. And really, it's a reaction to failure, disaster, the worst case scenario happening in our lifetimes, that they didn't qualify for the World Cup in 2017 for the 2018 tournament. And a wave of young gents, these teenagers mostly, realized in that moment that they had to fulfill their potential, en masse leave the United States of America, that formative time, 16, 17, 18 years of age, and test themselves against the best, trying to play for the best in the biggest games, in the biggest moments. And that's really what we've seen. It's not easy, but this is no straight line journey for any of them. It's a hero's journey. But it's there's great moments. There's moments of darkness, and they're always intertwined. And right now, as we approach the World Cup, this weird, surreal November World Cup, so many of our gents who've thrilled us, made us dream, who've soared, are dealing with issues of form or injury, or just being on the periphery of the US squad for reasons that we don't fully understand. But that's where we are. It's like Dickens, the best of times, the worst of times.
We promised that we would keep the show to the reasonable length, so I will stay away from the reasons why certain players are not on the team, because you and I will be here all day if we do that. You talk about players testing themselves. And I think part of my response to that is that it is also that the players are now good enough to break down some of the barriers and but I will use the word biases, and I think you would too, against American players over the years, especially in England. And I can think of few better examples of that than somebody who I have known since he was a 17-year-old amateur in the Philadelphia Union's youth academy with a mop of hair almost bigger than his head. And that is Brendan Aronson, who I know you know too, Roger. It is a remarkable story. And I know him. I know his brother Paxton, who plays for the Union now. I know their father, Rusty. I have started to watch their sister, who is there's Brendan playing for Leeds at a game that, Rog, as you know, I was at. Leeds' win over Chelsea when Brendan scored his first official goal in the Premier League. We know it was actually his second, but they didn't give him the first one. And about Brendan's sister, Jaden, by the way, who's a sophomore at Shawnee High, if you are watching out there from the NWSL, you are on the clock to getting an expansion team into this town by the time she turns pro. Let me put that on the record. But as for Brendan, it's been great fun getting to know him, watching a rise to stardom like I don't think I've ever seen in an American soccer player in terms of the speed with how it's happened. And he has just, Raj, you know this, and for me living here, he has captured imaginations in this town like no other men's player that I have seen. Obviously, Carly Lloyd is at the top of the recent soccer players overall from the Philly area. But what Brendan Aronson has done in terms of people watching him here, I see his Leeds jerseys at Union games now all the time. It helps, obviously, that they're blue and yellow tie-dye, and they're sort of the must-have fashion item over here now. But still, just watching his rise, watching him be at Leeds, thrive at Leeds under Jesse Marsh. They love him there, Raj, and they love him here. What's it been like for you watching his rise?
He's a remarkable human being. The world needs more Aronsons. America needs more Aronsons. We need multiple Aronsons. A big shout out to the Philadelphia Union. What an organization. We always look to clubs like Dallas, who are on that fault line between this incredible population of Latino footballers. Almost I've spent a lot of time out there in their youth academy. It's just like they're sitting on an oil well of incredible footballers. But what the Philadelphia Union have done over the past 5 years is truly remarkable. They have become the heartbeat of many of our, on the men's side of our youth teams. And it is remarkable to witness. And we really do owe a debt of thanks to the leadership of that team, how strategically they've invested and created this incredible production line of young, tactically astute, fearless. That's the thing about the footballers coming out of the Union. Fearless mentally, footballers, and none more than Brendan, who it's remarkable to watch, to see that rise and to leave the Union and then go to Austria. That's a big jump. Big jump tactically, to bring it culturally, language wise. Those locker rooms are a world away. You speak to these players, they're like, oh my God, what barbarity, what competition? Where's all the fun? Where's the joy? Where's the, in America, when you pass the ball away, rec soccer players who are listening will do it too. You say, my bad. Like, no one says that. They just go mad at you or hit you or whatever. It's a culture shock. And then to see him do it again, to arrive in the Premier League, the elite, really, I mean, just levels above in terms of his rapid ascension, and to take to it without really showing any self-doubt, any fear. Just the ball, one of those joyous footballers, when the ball goes to his feet, you're immediately on the edge. If you see a little like Sophia Smith on the women's side, you immediately lean forward. You know something great is possibly going to happen. And to watch him slalom through all comers, as he did at the weekend against Crystal Palace, and then intentionally bank a pass off the post to one of his own teammates, like LeBron hitting a pass off the backboard, was joyous. I take great pleasure. I also feel your pleasure. I love the city of Philadelphia. We're about to go on a tour during the World Cup where we're going sea to shining sea. We're going to be in Philadelphia November.
It terrifies me, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we'll chat about that. We're coming November 25th. We're playing the Miller Theatre, and we'd love to be with each and every one of you. I am thrilled for you because I know how much, I love it. I adore it, but I know how much the region takes so much pride. The Union takes so much pride in their graduates, which I think all MLS teams should do. It's not a loss when a player leaves. It's that deep connection, that deep gratitude. And so that's it. I will say, you see opponents now have a lot of video film of Aronson. He's no surprise. When you play Leeds, all the managers will now be like, that's the kid we got to shut down. That's the kid we got to kick lumps out of. That's the kid we got to kick off the park. And so watching him adapt, it's a marathon this season, physically demanding, mentally demanding. But my God, he is almost too young to know to be afraid. That he should be afraid. And I'm about to jump on. I do this monthly show with Tyler Adams, Road to the Cup.
Great guy, by the way.
And I just know the two of them are having so much bloody joy, slaying or hoping to slay. What you pointed out is still the stigma that surrounds American talent. It's almost shattered. But you can see with what Christian Pulisic's going through at Chelsea Football Club, in great times it's shattered, but when there's a little bit of hard times, the American stigma comes back, and it's like a rod that the players are beaten with.
You mentioned the show that will be here on November 25th. I did the math when your schedule came out. I am terrified, and the reason why I am terrified is that you are coming to Philadelphia on the night after the night of the U.S. England game. It's at 2:00 Eastern that afternoon. I can think of no more Philadelphian moment, because what is this city if not incredible volatile swings of emotion over a single game? And that game will have swings of emotion, the likes of which we can only imagine right now. It's going to be a wild day.
There's only one city I wanted to be in. The night that England played the United States of America. United States of America have never lost to England in World Cup play. You were all there, no matter what age you were. You're all there in 1950 when we shocked the Stanley Matthews England team. 2010, where Clint Dempsey did what Bruce Arena said. He just tries things. Yes. Yeah. And he tried stuff, and my God, it was glorious. That 1-1 win in group play. World Cups are their own ecosystem. Form kicks in when you arrive. This is a surreal World Cup, an insane World Cup, a November World Cup, a Qatar World Cup. And the US men are challenged currently. Many of those challenges appear to be self-inflicted. But I will say, there's all this tour. To me, we'll talk about Qatar and the World Cup being there, I'm sure, in a minute. But still, World Cups are the greatest collective experience of making shared memories globally, instantaneously. They've been compared to an eclipse, which covers the entire planet for a month instantaneously. And even though there's a lot of darkness, we do want to make joy. I don't want to go over there. I don't want to give a propaganda win to the host, but I do want to watch the football with Americans who love this game and have done World Cup to World Cup in increasing numbers to this moment where 2026, the World Cup's coming here, and it's coming to Philadelphia too. And I think that's going to be the moment that so many of us have dreamt of, that 1994 was meant to be. It was meant to turn football from the sport of the future, as we always joke on Men in Blazers, to the sport of the now. I think 2026 will truly finish the job. And let's just revel in it. Let's come to Philadelphia. Let's get in a theatre together. Let's put on tightest polyester jerseys. Let's raise the tifos, bring your banners, raise your beers with us. And whatever happens, it's England. Let's not be afraid. Let's not be afraid. Let's go and do it. And let's, soar or commiserate. And there's many reasons to be optimistic that we can break down. But most importantly, American sports fans, Philadelphia sports fans, let's do it together. Let's make great memories together.
I am looking forward to it, as I said, with an ounce of dread, but still looking forward to it. And, I said at the start of the show that there could be as many as 4 players from the Philadelphia region on this U.S. team, which not even the Walter Barr 1950 team had. That he is one of the great legends of the sport from the city, from this region. Aronson, as I said, from Medford, Pulisic from Hershey, Zach Steffen of Downingtown, PA, will be on the team, we think. We don't know whether he's going to be the starting goalkeeper or the number 2, and I mentioned that there are many decisions that we could spend 5 hours talking about, and that is one of them, which is why I'm going to try to stay away from it. The 4th is Mark McKenzie of Bear, Delaware, who was competing for one of the last center back spots, probably number 5 or number 6 on a depth chart, where 4 center backs will go to the team. We will see how that happens. McKenzie and Aronson played for the Union. All 4 of those players played with Union youth teams at some point over the years, even Pulisic, very briefly, which is a remarkable thing. But before we get too far into the fun stuff, Roger, you alluded to the questions that come up with a World Cup being played in Qatar. And along with a book that is over your shoulder, Gods of Soccer, which is a wonderful coffee table book with you and your Men in Blazers colleague, Michael Davies, and a number of teammates who have written these great stories and anecdotes and wonderful...
Philadelphia region, Miranda Davis.
Yes. And the illustrations are wonderful. I really am thrilled that there's the one of Alex Morgan doing her tea drinking celebration in there. I saw you on Jeopardy, Raj, which has a huge audience in Philadelphia in particular. I don't know if you know that. It's one of their highest ratings markets every day. Michael will tell you, there's Alex Morgan sipping tea on the field in Lyon after scoring against England, one of the great goal celebrations we've ever seen.
America.
And yet, Raj.
Yes.
There is this Qatar question, which you are tackling in a new podcast called World Corrupt with your friend Tommy Vitor of Pod Save America. And as the title of the show implies, it is not good. There have long been allegations of bribery and how Qatar won the hosting rights, questions of human rights abuses and the migrant workers who built the stadiums and the labor laws that took away their passports and underpaid them and all these other things. Thousands allegedly of deaths of workers on these construction projects. And now these millions of fans who will come to Qatar don't know how they'll be treated because of the discriminatory laws, some against women, against LGBTQ plus people, and others. What does it mean to you to be doing a show about all of this, along with, of course, all of the other fun stuff that you get to do shows?
So Men in Blazers, I think with like high culture, low culture, and we definitely have two tones within the media network. And just John Oliver comes on our show every year, and he set me off on this journey last year when he talked about, the World Cup is a spine to my life. When someone says, I met you in 1987, I'll be like, 1986. Okay, the World Cup was in Mexico. Maradona was destroying the English dreams, my heroes, with his hand. I remember exactly where I was when I watched that. Okay, now I can locate mentally where the world was back then. It's like the backbone to my entire life, my drumbeat. Football can give us such joy. It can give us such, I mean, it does. It's such just chatting about Brendan Aronson with you and the exhilaration, the giddiness. And football can also be so unbelievably dark. Just look at the Yates report and what the shadow that has cast over just the ebullience of women's football at this very bloody moment. So football is a game of light and darkness. John Oliver came on our show and talked about how, what do we do with a World Cup in Qatar? We love it. We live for World Cups. Yeah, this is a World Cup which is undeniably soaked in blood. The 6,500 foreign workers who are reported to have died getting Qatar ready for the visiting masses, and the human rights abuses that they're trying to cover over in the same way as Live Golf with Saudi Arabia. You know, they would like, instead of thinking about the human rights abuses, LGBTQ challenges, the deaths of the foreign workers, they want us to talk about Messi's just transcendent run through the Brazilian defense. They want us talking about Mbappe and the exclamation point goal that he scored. And sports can cover or misdirect. I think in this moment, we're quite poised, as it seems to be being about as well organized as the Fire Festival as the tournament hurtles towards us. And it can actually have the Streisand effect, where the world actually starts talking more about the thing they didn't want you to talk about because they've gone and made us all focus on it. And this World Cup, we did. I knew what I couldn't do was just sit by and do what I did with Russia. We went to Russia. And we did Putin's bidding. Every journalist that went there and reported how great Moscow looked, St. Petersburg. We were giving Putin the soft power win, which I know many of us deeply regret. So I'm not going to Qatar, not going to set foot there. But I did want to unpick these. You know, what FIFA did. There's a gentleman who we interview in World Corrupt. Episode 1 just dropped on our pod feed and Pod Save the World's pod feed. And in episode 2, we interviewed a former spokesperson for the Department of Justice who was there for the bidding process when Qatar was announced. And he said it was the most corrupt thing I've ever witnessed. And I cut my teeth in New Jersey politics, is what he said. So this gentleman who cut his teeth as in the Department of Justice, bringing down global narco groups, bringing down organized crime, and the like. He was like, oh my God, FIFA, that was next level. So their decision, brazen decision to give this World Cup to a state that's smaller than Connecticut for reasons of backhanders and corruption, this thing we love that fills us with joy, it's bloody difficult. It fuses sports with the geopolitical. And what I wanted to do with World Corrupt is really just try and untangle the two, work out why FIFA, who are meant to be self-governing, growing the game for the force of good in the world, would do this thing, and why Qatar would want it in the first place. And then what we as fans should do as a result. And the players also, we interviewed a lot of players, what they're intending to do, what they can do that can create change. And frankly, make sure that this never happens again.
Watching questions from the viewers come in, Andrew Millington asks, what will it take for FIFA corruption to be curtailed, if not reformed? As somebody who has written and covered about this a lot, in fact, here's one of the many outrageous coincidences of all of this. Remember the morning the Department of Justice announced the big first announcement with Loretta Lynch into of investigation to corruption? That was the day in 2015 of the U.S. women's team's World Cup media day at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square. And a friend of mine who was at the Department of Justice event brought me over the binder that they gave the media with everything in it, and it was 8 inches tall. It was amazing. You know, there are so many layers to it. There are so many frustrating layers to it. And yet, as you and I have said throughout this show already, there is nothing that drives interest in the sport of soccer in this country like a World Cup, men's and women's, as we know, as there is lots of evidence of for decades now. Not MLS, not the NWSL, not the Premier League, not the Champions League, the Euros, the Copa America, you name it. The World Cup beats them all. And some people will say grows interest. I will go so far as to say multiplies interest. Your average MLS game gets 300,000 to 500,000 viewers. A Premier League game or a U.S. national team game gets 500,000 to a million viewers. A World Cup game gets 10, 20, 25, 30 million viewers. We all think that U.S.-England game might be the first one in the history of the U.S. to crack 40. That's how big it's going to be. Nothing does it like the World Cup. You know, how do we take it? I'm tempted to ask how we take it in, but it's too simple a question. You know what I mean? What's this one going to be like, do you think?
I will say the World Cups, the Women's World Cup at the beginning was really the driver, the dominant. You know, Americans love winners, and that US Women's National Team, the great winner that we have ever produced. The Men's World Cup really did post 2010 start to just be like a giant wave that always left a bigger and bigger audience. I do think the Premier League and the Champions League has played a very important role in giving that audience something to connect to once the circus had left town. A narrative, a sense of deep connectivity, and it's the access to that in a really easily through the internet, funnily enough, as opposed to just being banked on some remote channel, which it always was in the 90s. That's really been game changing. EA Sports, FIFA has also been the silent hand that's grown the game in the United States. All those things have combined together to where we are today. But this World Cup is going to be a surreal one. You know, right now, there's almost no pre-buzz for this tournament. And World Cup is normally in the summer. When I say normally, World Cup's always in the bloody summer. Yeah. It's always in June, July. And the league shut down. The players go on holiday. We look on Instagram and see where they're all on their yachts, on their mega yachts, on their whatever. You know, wicked, who's hanging out with who hates who. We're all in that. And then, boom, they're in camp for 3 weeks somewhere. They play warm-up games and the drum roll starts beating, and then boom, they're in the World Cup. There's no pre-hype because right now they're crushing in Premier because it was 120 degrees in this place that is not fit to host a tournament. But oh my God, they paid us a ton of cash. They've shoved the whole thing into November. The season itself, the club season is being buckled, almost sacrificed as a result of that greed. And so there's so many bloody games thick and fast. We're not even thinking about the World Cup. You speak to the players, they're just trying to survive these like 9 games that they have to play in October. So it's very weird in the world, even like right now, they're thinking about this Champions League round. And then at the weekend, we're going to see Man City play Liverpool. So the World Cup, it still feels like it's over the hill. It's definitely on the horizon. We can see it, but it's not quite in front of our faces. It should be. And in America, the NFL is smothering everything. And so it's going right into the buzzsaw of the NFL. And so, you know, I ache a little bit. The World Cup has been massive in the United States, but it's had nothing else to compete with. It was all the other big leagues were out of season. It was its thing on its own. What do you want on your Bloomberg terminal on the trading floor? Well, there's sod else. Let's put the World Cup on. I just find that the Germans are so funny with their manager who picks his butt during the games. Americans have gotten into the World Cup because it had nothing else to compete with. So I think the World Cup is going to be surreal in Qatar. Qatar does not look quite ready. I think there's going to be a fire festival dimension for those who are traveling over, 1.5 million. The games will be broadcast and will be wonderful. It will break late in the United States. I think Americans will fall in love with it as they always have, but it's going to break bloody late here. Fox and their commercials are only just starting to come out. But normally, that's the one thing I do know. Normally right now, we would all be starting to get the buzz. And it, by the way, it plays to US soccer's favor because we're not worried about the team in the way we should be right now. But it will be upon us. It will be upon us before we know it. I feel, to be honest, from a workload, I feel like we're in the full World Cup throes of it. It's slightly surreal that it feels a little off jigger to what it normally is.
And then after this World Cup, Women's World Cup next year in Australia, New Zealand. And then the next Men's World Cup, as we said at the top of the show, is here in the United States, including here in Philadelphia. The first time a Men's World Cup will be here. A lot of people are so excited. Lincoln Financial Field is as good a venue as there's going to be in the country for it. I think between the transportation infrastructure, the grass field that's already the right size, and the sports fandom of this town, and we can only imagine, if we think this U.S.-England game is big, we can only imagine U.S.-England at the Link in Philadelphia on July 4th, 2026, with the U.S. in the quarterfinals playing to go to the semis for the first time since 1930, I think it would have been. And
we should talk about that more, by the way. I don't know why we don't talk about that more, but go on.
Obviously, I've been writing about this a lot, as you know, and a lot of the viewers who follow my work know. I believe that of all the host cities, what is it, 16 or 17, whatever it is, Philadelphia will be among the ones that have their reputations on the global stage enhanced the most. This city that for so long has been inward-looking and parochial and a little dismissive of outsiders, people who are not from here, but yet under their noses has become incredibly diverse like it's never been before, vibrant like it's never been before. And I think that 2026, I mean, you know the food culture here already because you've gotten to experience some of it. And if you were going to be here for any longer, I would take you to more of it while you were here, because there are some places I really want to take you. But I really think that Philadelphia stands to benefit so much from the world coming here and from the reputation that you have for the rest of time as a World Cup host city. You've been here before, you know the place. What do you think the impact can be for a city like this?
I think that the World Cup is going to be the biggest thing on a field in Philadelphia since Brian Dawkins. I will say your depiction of Philadelphia, I've never felt it. I've always loved Philadelphia. I've always felt super close to Philadelphia. I love the Philly spirit. I love the Philly energy. I love Philly sports fandom. Honestly, it reminds me of Liverpool, where I grew up. You know, I grew up in the 1980s in Liverpool when football and music was all we had, how we announced ourselves to the world. And people feared us because we were so bloody good. Everton were great, by the way, listeners. Everton were one of Europe's great football clubs. Liverpool, undoubtedly, one of Europe's great football clubs. And we would travel around Europe behind our teams, and it was joyous, and everybody loathed us, and it was wild and a bit insane. The equivalent, when I see you guys grease up your bloody Crisco up your phone calls, I'm like, I love that crap. Get to that I relate to. Yeah. So Philly, I love it. Don't change. Please don't change. Stay yourself. It's one of the most swaggeringly self-confident and joyous and wondrous American sporting cultures, and I adore every ounce of it. But I think it's going to be enormous. This World Cup 2026, we already feel that Men in Blazers has grown so bloody fast because we're just a surfer riding this wave. This wave is football. The football, the sport I love, growing in the nation I adore. It is, for 2026, and the commercial energy behind it, which drives all growth, is already pouring in. The interest, the fan base, and it will be for Philly. It will be seismic. But Jonathan, you can't separate that out, to be candid, from what is going to happen in the United States, sharing this World Cup with Mexico and with Canada. It's going to be NAFTA, NAFTA football with great wonder. And I do think, I moved here in 1994 with that World Cup, which was meant to turn football into like a pogo stick or a yo-yo, a fad that's sweeping the nation. It didn't on the surface because it was meant to be an overnight success. Instead, that climb has been slow and steady, World Cup to World Cup, US women's national team, World Cup glory after World Cup glory, and the Champions League and the Premier League being broadcast here, really driving things, with MLS, growing and doing its thing in the mix also. And I think 2026 is going to be the moment to go back to the beginning of this conversation. You talked about that wave of young men's players normalizing their talent in the European market. I think 2026 is going to be the moment that many of us have had this dream. Many of you watching will have had it. We've dreamt about the game we love. Honestly, what are we dreaming about? We're dreaming about becoming a normal sport. in the United States, and I think that would be that would be the achievement. I do believe the legacy of 2026 football will become a normal sport, just like it is in every other nation. It will be a great American sport, as it is in England, as it is in Germany, as it is in Cameroon, as it is in all other parts of the world, and it will be delicious.
That was exactly what we dreamed of when I was a kid in the stands at RFK Stadium in DC back in the day, in the bouncing bleachers. We just wanted to be normal, That was exactly it. We have a couple of questions from readers, and I will take one here before we sign off, because I really like this one. It's from Big Bruiser 56. Raj, when are you going to pull a Ryan Reynolds Wrexham AFC and build your own club from the trenches? And how do you think the Wrexham story is for the sport as compared to the Premier League team buyouts by Americans, many of whom we know, one of whom is kicking the tires, I believe, on your beloved Everton at the moment?
Yeah. So it is a wild time. Premier League is transformed by the influx of money, sheikh money, oligarch money. And I think England's decided both of those are a bit dodgy. Nature abhors a vacuum. Who's pouring in? It is American investors. And the next century will be the American century in the global game. When speaking to American sports investors, they all want to charge in. They've all realized how if you own the Red Sox, you essentially own a brand property in 8 states in America. No one else cares. But if you own a Premier League team, you can megaphone to the world. So the American surge of investors is both an incredible thing to witness. It's also a challenging thing to witness. You only need 14 owners to agree on something in the Premier League, and they can change anything. And we're at 11 with the Bournemouth gentleman who's about to take over that club. And Everton owner is imminent. There will be more on the way. And I just hope that American owners realize what they're buying, respect it, understand the difference to owning an American sports franchise. Ultimately, what I care about, what I believe my tiny role is in football, is it's not about owning a team which has great moments, terrible moments, and then you're responsible because you're actually owning something that local fan bases care about deeply. It's not a toy. You can't be an absentee landlord. You have to be in it, not just for now or tomorrow, but the bloody long term. Just like a puppy is not just for Christmas. I care about the audience in the United States of America. That's all I focus about. It's all I think about. It's all I really care about is the conversation, the passion, the sense of community here, the sense of connectivity. I think that this is the last thing I'll say is I think the United States is the greatest place to watch global football from.
Oh, it is.
Just the dedicated sense of discovery, the passion, the knowledge, the amount of football. We can watch the Colombian Premier League live if we want, the Uruguay. It's all on here. You can't watch as much Premier League in England as you can in the United States of America. We are living in golden days. And to be honest, the thing I care about is not owning a team in any way, shape or form, because we get asked for that all the bloody time. I care about owning the conversation and the responsibility of discussing US women, US men, Champions League, NWSL, Premier League, all those narratives with an audience who, and this is the joy of the American audience, we take none of it for granted. We're looking at it with open eyes, with a wonder, and with love. I do love, English football fandom is very parochial. It's very local. It's very zero-sum game. My team are great, so yours must be crap. And just a mutual sense of appreciation and wonder, and realizing that when Aronson pushes up in the last second to head home a goalkeeper, head home such a crucial goal, even if you hate Liverpool, even if your team rides against them, I think in America, more than anywhere I've been, we can be like, oh my God, that was humanly wonderful. That was transcendent. That, my heart can't be dead to that. And that's what I love about this American football audience. And I hope it never changes, Jonathan.
I can't imagine, Raj, a fan base that hates Liverpool. I just, what a thought.
Who could that be?
I will only add, and I agree with all of that. I will only add to Bruiser's point.
Bruiser.
I think, Raj, and a lot of the readers know, I do, professional obligation being what it is, I do watch Arsenal more than any other Premier League team. How about I phrase it that way?
It's just for Matt Turner, right?
And when the aborted and thankfully failed Super League concept came around, what the American owners in the Premier League, and I think of the Cronkies in particular, what they got wrong. The Cronkies who own the Rams and a number of the sports teams in Denver also own Arsenal. What they got wrong is that for as big of a brand as Arsenal is, it is also a deeply local, almost neighborhood team in London, in a very specific part of London. And you have, as you said, you have to be able, as an owner of a Premier League club, to understand that and the global brand at the same time. If you can do that, as the Cronkies have come, I think, around to starting to understand that now, you will succeed. If you don't, you end up being in great peril. And I surely will never have enough money to buy even a Wrexham scale of club. So I will leave it to people far smarter than I. And Raj, I will conclude there and raise to you my mug of highfalutin Fortnum and Mason Earl Grey tea, which runs me out of Philadelphia for being a fan of such a product. Sure. It has been such a pleasure.
It's a joy to be with you. It's a joy to be with your great city. Dupe to all of you. Big shout out to everyone in Lower Merion especially. God bless you. I love each and every one of you and cannot wait to raise a glass with you in person on the 25th. Tickets are available for the Miller Theatre on meninblazers.com now. Come and have a couple of buds with Roger.
I am looking forward to it. Of course, they're on @meninblazers on all the big social media handles. I am so looking forward to seeing you down the street from my place next month. Thanks to all of you who have joined us today on Inquirer Live, and we will see you next time.
Support your local newspapers. Courage.